I'm Jeff Davis, taking you on the wine road. Last week, you heard my interview during harvest with the Booker family, which took place 3 weekends ago. The next day, I was up at dawn once again for the drive to Dry Creek Valley to join winemaker Ashley Herzberg at Amista Vineyards. Owner Vicki Farrow also showed up that morning. In this first segment, I'll talk with Ashley about their harvesting and their wines. Then in the next segment, I join her at the crush facility to talk about that process. You'll learn quite a bit about the sparkling wine methods in these segments. And just in case you haven't heard this on my show before, the term Brix refers to the degree of sugar content in the grapes, and that helps determine when the time is right for picking. You'll be hearing quite a bit about Brix in the next couple of minutes. The vineyard crew at Amista had picked their Chardonnay for their sparkling wine a couple of weeks before. The morning I was there, they were picking Syrah for one of their red sparkling varietals, which, as you'll hear, I truly enjoy. Now, I understood why, but it was still strange to see them picking Syrah before some of the Chardonnay that was still on the vine.
Yeah, we're picking Syrah for sparkling Syrah, so a little bit earlier. But yeah, everything is about the same Brix right now. We have Chardonnay and Syrah, Zin, and Cab, about the same Brix, so about 21-ish right now.
And what are you hoping to get it to?
The Chardonnay will get to about 24. All the reds will probably get to 25.
But you picked your Chardonnay for the sparkling, was it last week or the week before?
2 weeks ago. Yeah, we picked that one at 19, and I'm glad we got it off the vine when we did. It's tasting really, really good. But now we have to wait. Now it's the waiting game to pick it for still wine.
Explain to our listeners why you picked the sparkling wine grapes first.
Yeah, so sparkling has to be a lower alcohol and which means that it needs to be a lower sugar level because sugar converts to CO2 and alcohol because it goes through a secondary fermentation. And if the alcohol is too high, the yeast can't ferment in the bottle. The alcohol will kill them off. So we picked really low, which gives us about 11.5% alcohol from the first fermentation, and then we get about 1% more from the secondary fermentation in the bottle.
What's next for the Chardonnay that you picked a couple of weeks ago?
Right now it's just slowly fermenting. It's at about 16 Brix. It's still just slowly dropping about 0.3 a day. We'll probably ferment it for another month and then rack it off of the lees, anything that settles out, and then get it into the bottle for the traditional method champenois to get it into the secondary fermentation.
And then what's next?
We add the tirage liqueur, so it's a mix of a little bit of sugar with a little bit of yeast and some settling agents, and that helps it to go through the secondary fermentation. And that's what we disgorge out. So that's what we pop out of the bottle at the end after the secondary fermentation, and then we add the dosage and top up the bottles. That'll be about 1 to 3 years later.
Then how long do you let it sit before you sell it?
Well, it sits in that bottle for 12 to 36 months, and then usually once we get it disgorged, it's only a few months. We can't resist. We're always sold out in the tasting room, so I'm always trying to keep it on the cork a little bit longer, and the tasting room and the owners are like, we have to get it out. So.
Well, as we were talking, this is you're picking Syrah today for your sparkling Syrah, and I'm such a big fan of deeper red sparkling wines.
Me too. I love it. And the great thing about the sparkling Syrah, not just the color, but also just the kind of intensity that it gives. Like, it's just such a food-friendly wine. You can pair it with anything, and it kind of gets rid of that misnomer that sparkling is only for an aperitif or for oysters or anything. You can pair this with pork or like a porchetta, anything, duck. It just cuts through any kind of rich meat, and it has just a little more earthy tones, and but it's also dry. No residual sugar, so it's very clean, not cloying. I love it too.
And you do a sparkling Grenache. What other reds do you have?
Just for the sparkling, we do a sparkling Grenache, a sparkling Syrah, and then this year we're going to make a sparkling Mourvedre. That'll be an experiment. It's one of the varietals that goes into Spanish cava. So we have some on our estate property, so we're going to play around with that. And then we make a blend of some of the different red grapes that we have for sparkling. We make a little bit of a Blanc de Noir style blend. So we'll play around with that this year too.
You're bottling sparkling Rhone varietals, but doing them separately.
Yes, yeah. So we're doing
And blends too, of course.
yeah, and that's what's making it fun. You know, we have all these great Rhone varietals growing on our property, and so we're just kind of putting them together in unique ways. And you know, we've just got our own little Rhone Valley here, right here in Dry Creek, on our property, and then we've just kind of hit a high note with our sparklings, and we just want to kind of keep it fresh and keep those going and making more. And you know, as a winemaker, like, I love to make blends and make new things, so I'm always pushing for, like, what else can we do? What else can we make? So the Mourvèdre has been a little bit of a pet project, and last year I did a Saunier, so I bled juice from the tank of still wine just to see how it would taste and see if it would make a nice rosé for sparkling, and it was delicious. So we'll see, fingers crossed.
So I'm guessing no Pinot Noir in your sparkling.
No Pinot. Nope.
That's unusual.
Yeah, we use non-traditional varietals except for Chardonnay. Pinot wouldn't grow well on our property, and all of our sparklings are estate grown. So, you know, and we like the bigger, more earth-toned reds, and we like being a little bit different. And I think everyone agrees because people really like our sparkling. So
definitely, but the term Blanc de Noir almost always suggests there's Pinot in there, but yeah. Not here.
No, not here. Yeah, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier are the classic red grapes for sparkling wine. But you know, what people don't realize, that's from Champagne heritage, but in Italy and Spain and anywhere else where they're making sparkling wines, a wide variety of varietals are used. So we're not really that far off. We're planning what's best for our soil type and then making wines from that, instead of kind of forcing Pinot to grow where it probably wouldn't be quite as happy.
Yeah, you'd have to source it from somewhere. You couldn't grow it here.
Exactly, yeah. Source it from Russian River or somewhere a little bit cooler climate. So, but you know, we don't really have a need to do that right now because we're doing well.
You're making awesome sparkling as it is.
Yeah, exactly. I love them, and I love that it has just a little more character, you know, than a traditional sparkling. For the Syrah, we're going to leave it on the skins for about 8 hours before we press it to give it nice color and also to kind of infuse some of that flavor from the skins into the juice. So yeah, it'll be kind of twofold. It'll be great.
I'm amazed at the difference between the Mourvèdre, which is right next to the Syrah here, and how nicely manicured it looks, and the Syrah is just going crazy. It's quite vigorous. What a difference in the two vines.
Yeah, Syrah is definitely vigorous. Also, we grafted the Mourvèdre onto Syrah about 5 years ago, so the Mourvèdre is still a little bit younger, but Mourvèdre isn't a super vigorous grape anyway. It's a little more reserved in how much fruit it throws out there and how, like, you know, crazy the canopy gets. But Syrah goes crazy, and this is nutrient-rich soil, so it likes it here.
Now, for those who are familiar with Amista, seeing you on Dry Creek Road, they've probably noticed that you tore out one of your front vineyards here. You say you're planting Grenache there. You took out Chardonnay for Grenache.
Yeah, we did. So that Chardonnay had been planted, on GDC, Geneva Double Curtain trellising. It was a little bit older. We had been planning to replant to Chardonnay, and we still have another 8 acres of Chardonnay on our property, and we were selling to another winery because we didn't take it all for ourselves. So we decided to plant to Grenache because we only have 1 acre planted of Grenache right now, and we use it in 3 different wines: our sparkling Grenache, our still Grenache, and our Trace, which is our GSM blend. So Grenache was kind of the logical choice, and it's a good fit for that soil type. We did all the soil analysis and found just the right rootstock and clones to make a really nice Grenache. So we'll get that in probably in the spring. We're going to let it lie fallow for a year. And then we'll also have 1 acre of Mourvèdre going in the back too. One more acre.
So when will you be harvesting, do you think, that vineyard?
The Grenache? The new vineyard?
The one that you haven't quite planted yet.
Yeah, so we're probably 4 or 5 years out on that. So it's a hurry up and wait game.
Isn't that amazing? That's the one thing about making wine, is how long you have to plan ahead and how long it takes to get there. I mean, you may not even be here then.
I certainly hope to be here, first of all, yeah. But But yeah, it is kind of that waiting game. You kind of have to be able to extrapolate into the future. What are things going to taste like? Where are you going to be? Where are you going to be with your, with your sales, and where are you going to be with your winemaking? And
what's going to be popular at that time?
Yeah, what's going to be popular, and we try not to follow the crowds with popularity, because things go through such waves. Syrah kind of lost its popularity a few years ago, and our Syrah does great. It sells well and tastes great. So we didn't follow that trend of tearing out Syrah to plant Pinot, because Syrah is what grows best here, and it's done well for us. So we're gonna stick with what we like and what grows well here. But that is kind of the beauty and the struggle with winemaking.
As you can see, as you plan 5-10 years in advance, it's no wonder that winemakers work until their 80s and 90s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially when you're making sparkling, because some sparkling is laid down for 10 years and you're just waiting. And yeah, I think the other reason why winemakers work for so long is because it's a really fun job. It doesn't always feel like work. So we have kind of both sides of it. You want to see where your wines go, and most of the winemakers that I know, they haven't lost their passion. For it, even in their 80s.
And you're lucky because this is a estate grown, so you don't have to go any farther than just coming here.
Yes, exactly.
I've talked to some winemakers who have been on the road constantly in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, it's very nice to have estate property and just to be all in one location and do all of my sampling here. So everything is very local. And Mike and Vicky, the owners, set it up that way. They wanted everything to be right here in Dry Creek, very close, very local, a very strong sense of place.
Well, I know you probably want to go check on the picking crew, so I'll wrap up for now and maybe we'll chat later.
Okay, sounds great.
She's winemaker Ashley Herzberg at Amista Vineyards in Dry Creek Valley, Sonoma County. I'll meet up with her again at the crush facility next, as On the Wine Road continues during harvest. I'm Jeff Davis, and this is On the Wine Road. On today's show, I'm covering harvest once again, this time picking for sparkling wine. A few weekends ago, I met Ashley Herzberg at Amista Vineyards to participate in and observe their harvest. About 10 a.m. or so, we left the vineyard and followed the truck packed with grape bins to Rack and Riddle in Alexander Valley. It's a custom crush facility that many winemakers use. There, the grape bins were being forklifted off the trucks and dumped into an auger that slowly pushed the grapes into the destemmer. The juice and grape skins were directed through tubes to fill empty bins, there to gain color for their Syrah sparkling wine. Ashley continues.
Yes, so grape juice is clear for the most part, most varietals. The only way it gets its deep color is from the color pigments in the skins. So for our sparkling Syrah, we like it to have a really deep raspberry color. So after years of kind of experimenting and playing around, and some years getting it right and some years getting it wrong, I've kind of honed in that it takes about 8 or 9 hours on the skins to get that really pretty color, but also have it be a little bit translucent. We don't want enough color that it's like a red wine. So we'll let it sit in the press, and then tonight at about 8 or 9 o'clock, we'll press it off of the skins, and we'll just have the juice.
Interesting that the testing you were talking about, sometimes you were doing this later in the day and letting it go overnight, and that was too much color, and some too short too? Yeah,
so I did a really light year where I was checking the color every 2 hours, and after about 6 hours, I thought the color was just perfect. And then when you press, you kind of lose some of that deep tone, some of the dissolved solids, so it makes it look a little bit darker. And we got a really light sparkling Syrah that year. And then the next
And you can't just go, well, put them back in.
Yeah, exactly.
For a little while longer. You can't really do that, huh?
No, you can't do that. It doesn't quite work that way. And then the year after that, I did a little bit too long of skin contact. So I picked in the morning and then let it just sit, and destemmed it in the evening and crushed it in the evening, and then let it sit overnight. So it was about 12 to 15 hours. And that was a little bit too deep of a color for me.
So you're consumers were thinking, different color every year. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But you've honed it in now. You got the Goldilocks just right.
I think so. But that's what makes it a fun, natural product. Because every year is a little bit different. Every year we have a little bit different conditions from Mother Nature. Last year was very dry, so the skin to juice ratio was a little bit off. So we are a little bit different than previous years, so it didn't need quite as much time. This year the berries are a little bigger and a little juicier, so I'm going to give it a little bit more time. So we'll see. We'll see how it ends up.
So what do you do with the juice after it's been extracted from the skins? How long does that just sit around, or where does it go next?
Yeah, good question. So we chill it in a tank for 2 days. We chill it to about 45 degrees and then rack it off anything that's settled out. So any solids, any little bits of grape skins or anything like that. Rack it off of that, and then we inoculate it and ferment it really cold. So ferment it at 52 degrees. It'll take about 4 or 5 weeks to go through fermentation. And then after that, we'll rack again and get it into the bottle for the secondary fermentation.
And racking is basically removing it from and moving it to something else.
Yeah, removing it from everything that's settled out. Yeah, removing it from any solids, or we call it lees. So removing it from that. So we do that a few times, and that's what gives it its brilliance. It's really like pretty see-through color and texture. So yeah. And
some still wines work very well on the lees. It creates a real nice soft mouthfeel and a creaminess. So like, especially with Chardonnay, they like to keep that Chardonnay on the lees. Do you do that with yours?
Yes, with our still Chardonnay, we leave it on the lees the whole time. Once it gets out of the press, it goes straight to barrel, and we leave it on the lees for 11 months in each individual barrel. So there's a little bit of barrel-to-barrel variation. Each barrel ferments at a slightly different rate. We do a lot of native fermentation, so about half of our barrels go native. So that means just the indigenous yeast from our vineyard ferment the barrels to completion. And then we use 3 different yeasts for the rest of the lots, or the rest of the barrels. So we get a lot of nuances and subtleties, and that makes a lot of layers and complexity in our barrels. So that's a totally different kind of winemaking than sparkling wine, but also very fun.
I was going to say, it must be fun for you to do both.
It's very fun. I feel really fortunate. Not a lot of winemakers get to have that crossover, and it keeps it fun for me. It keeps everything exciting, and unfortunately I'm usually the first one to harvest and then the last one to harvest, but because I make sparkling and then I also make cab, but that's okay with me. Harvest is the fun time of year, so it's great to have my hands in a lot of different varietals and be using a lot of different equipment and winemaking styles. It keeps me on my toes.
So you started mid-August with the sparkling Chardonnay, and when do you think you're going to wrap up with the Cabernet?
Cab will probably be early October, maybe late September, but this year we've kind of stalled out a little bit. The weather has started to cool down, so my cab isn't even all the way through veraison, and from veraison it's about 45 days to picking. So
that's when it changes the color from the green grapes to the purple.
Yes, that's right. So I've got a little ways on that. I'll probably have most of my other stuff in by mid-September, and then just be kind of waiting for the cab. We get it from Rockpile, so it'll just kind of be hanging on up there. So so if the weather holds out, fingers crossed. Right now everything is tasting so great, and it's been a really good harvest so far, but we're at the very beginnings of it, so we'll see how it goes.
But certainly a better year than last.
Better sort of. The flavors last year were wonderful, but it was such a dry year that the vines were stressed, and everything was very light. The crop was very light because the vines they had no water, so they just couldn't put as big of a crop out as they normally would. So in terms of that, in terms of the vine health, this year is much easier and much better, but quality-wise is still to be determined. My 2015s are very concentrated. They had really low yields, which means lots of flavor in what we do have. So it's kind of a misnomer to say that this is a better year overall, because that's still to be determined.
Well, you're going to be making more wine this year, so in that sense it'll be a little bit better.
Yeah, that part's always better. Last year was definitely short, and it's hard when you have to look at your owners and say, oops, sorry, we only harvested half the Chardonnay that we thought we would get. But yeah, so in that sense, it's gonna be a really good year. So.
Well, Ashley, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you, and I wish you great success with the rest of your harvest.
Oh, thank you so much.
She's such a sweet lady and very talented. Aside from making wonderful sparkling and still wine for Amista Vineyards, she also makes wine for other wineries, and my wife and I are always fans of her work. You may recall Amista Vineyards participates in Sonoma County's free vineyard walking tours, so you too can wander through their vineyards before or after a tasting. Learn more about Ashley, proprietors Vicki and Mike Farrow, and their tasting room at amistavineyards.com. I really enjoyed being part of their harvest and appreciate them letting me tag along. I'm Jeff Davis. Thanks for listening to this episode of On the Wine Road.